Welcome back everyone, it's Charlie. This will be my full Marvel What If Season 3 Episode 5 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs here, a bunch of characters from Marvel Phase 4, and based on what they were doing in the episode, you can kind of tell they were planning for some movies and TV series to happen before this, so people would have like a stronger connection to the characters they were actually using. Like, it feels like they were expecting to see Shang-Chi 2 before this actually came out, and even the Ironheart series, just because her character was so big during this. But the way everything has been delayed now, she's barely a character right now in the MCU, and some of the characters they put together in this just feel like a sort of grab bag, like, who have we not put in episodes yet? Why don't we put them in an episode together? We'll put them on a team. But I did think it was cool they followed up on the idea that Mysterio is actually successful in taking over the remnants of the Earth in this universe, and they follow up on the promise of the actual emergence itself, like they show what would actually happen if the emergence were to go down. So at least that part of the episode was actually kind of an interesting idea. But one of the other big things is they finally end with a tag scene at the end, setting up like the big threat for the end of the series, which brings everything full circle, with the other Watchers from his race basically finally coming after him for breaking his oath so many times. Like, literally they reference him. He's broken his oath again, as in he's done it multiple times. We need to do something about this eventually. It makes sense that at a certain point, the other members of the Watcher's race would actually do something about the Watcher. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. There's only 3 left, and they basically canceled the show after this season. Maybe they'll bring it back in several years. The way they've explained it, the show's basically run its course, and I think this episode is a good example of some of the problems they're running into actually developing concepts, like doing what-if episodes that fulfill the promise of the what-if series. The whole promise of the What If comics is that you can do anything, any concept, however crazy, with any combination of characters. But the producers of the series revealed that Marvel powers that be, including Kevin Feige, basically blocked a lot of their really cool ideas that went way harder than the actual episodes we got. So if you feel like a lot of the episodes through like Season 2 and Season 3 now have been kind of weak sauce, like, wait a minute, this is what they did. They could have done something so much better than this. Well, it turns out they actually did have ideas that they pitched to Kevin Feige in the Marvel powers that be that got turned down because they didn't want them stepping on the toes of future movies and using twists that they planned on doing in the future movies. For example, the What If people wanted to do a Ghost Rider storyline. They wouldn't let them do that because he was going to be a character in Deadpool and Wolverine for a while, but that didn't wind up happening. But they still had to block the What If episode because they had to start making that Ghost Rider episode a long time ago if they were going to make it, when they hadn't made Deadpool and Wolverine yet. They were going to do a Shang-Chi versus Iron Fist episode, but apparently they're planning on doing that in the movies at some point. But it sounds like when that was happening, they were planning on Shang-Chi 2 being released way sooner, but that's been delayed because the director of that movie is now doing Spider-Man 4 in the MCU. So like, we're not going to see Shang-Chi 2 till after Secret Wars at this point. So imagine all the amazing what-if episodes they could have done, but got blocked by Marvel just because of all the delays behind the scenes. It just creates all kinds of problems. So the episodes that they are able to do wind up being the weaker material. But now, doesn't it make sense why they canceled the series? Because, like, if they were to do a Season 4, they'd have to do a bunch of X-Men stuff, a bunch of Deadpool stuff. There's all the Fantastic Four stuff they could do, which would be fantastic. Like, those would be great what-if episodes, but those movies haven't come out yet. And if they were going to release Season 4 next year, they would have had to start a couple years ago. And Marvel wasn't going to let them do that because they didn't want them stepping on ideas, potentially releasing those episodes before the movies actually came out. So it kind of sounds like a giant mess behind the scenes with the development of the What If series, and I'm totally fine with them canceling the series for like several years and just waiting for a bunch of these movies to come out and for them to use a bunch of twists so that eventually they can do the What If episodes they should have been doing right now. But the actual episode title was What If the Emergence Destroyed Earth, a reference to the events of the Eternals movie, fulfilling the promise of what if Tiamut had finished emerging from the Earth successfully, destroying the planet. What happens in the aftermath of that? The Marvel animation logo is the same, but they use a new song to start over the credits, and the Watcher starts immediately narrating how the emergence during the Eternals movie was successful. Tiamut breaks free from the Earth, breaking it into a bunch of pieces, but there's a little bit of atmosphere clinging to those pieces, so pieces of humanity wound up surviving, but just a fraction of it. That's why he calls this the final act of a tragic story, because it's basically like the last remnants of Earth clinging to life barely. Normally, you would think after something like this, if there are survivors on planet Earth, they would just find a way to go to a different planet somewhere in the universe. Like, why are they staying in this situation instead of just traveling to another planet? That's literally the Skrulls' storyline inside the MCU. Their planet was destroyed in the Kree-Skrull War, so they spent a bunch of time looking for another place to live. So all the shots you see of the cities and the buildings here are on the remnants of Earth that did survive, little pieces of Earth. Some of them are now underground too. But the reason why people can walk around and breathe is because there's still some atmosphere around the planet itself. Riri Williams is being chased by a patrol of Ultron bots, which are basically calling a version of the Iron Legion that Mysterio has taken over in the aftermath of the emergence. This is why they look more like the Iron Legion bots from the beginning of Avengers Age of Ultron before Ultron took over, or from like Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. You could think of them as more of a reference to that as well too. So he's just using all of Iron Man's technology to his own ends. That's why this other poster shows Mysterio, because he's claimed rulership over the remnants of the human race and the remaining pieces of Earth. Behind it is the Avengers logo, graffiti on the wall, sort of setting up the twist at the end of the episode where she puts up like the nanite version, giant size, around the Earth's remnants of the Avengers logo. The way the Watcher narrates this episode, she's meant to be like one of the last remaining heroes left alive. The way they explain it is that all the other heroes on Earth are dead at this point. The people that you see in the episode, like this small team, is all that's left of the actual Resistance and like the big Marvel characters. Like I said, this episode wound up being more of an actual Riri Williams Ironheart episode, and I think they expected that Ironheart series would have come out before this, and they would have just been a bigger character, like people would have formed a bigger connection with her character before this episode happened. But the way it's actually worked out with all the delays, like people probably barely remember that character from Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Like, oh yeah, she was a small character during that. Like, isn't there going to be a TV series about her at some point? Oh, okay, yeah, maybe that's why they did the episode. So if you thought it was confusing why they would do an episode all about her, that's why. Also because it's one of the few characters that Marvel Powers That Be would let them actually use. You just see them pitching episodes and then being like, why don't you use some of these other characters over here, like the B, C, D-list characters? No, don't use the big ones because we're going to be putting them in movies really soon. She uses her tech to find the location of the Sharon Carter power broker, and she did come back to voice her character in the episode. There are a couple examples where actors did not come back to voice their characters, and there are a couple big new character cameo scenes, particularly with the Watchers at the end of the episode. I'll explain when we get to that part. All the numbers on her heads-up display here, like her version of an Iron Man heads-up display, because this is Ironheart from the comics, and a lot of her tech is based on Iron Man's tech. All these numbers, I think, are meant to represent issues from the comics and from the games, and just like the what-if concept in general. So like 765 is the number of the Marvel Ultimate Alliance universe. 876 was a universe that another female Loki, not the one from the Loki series, was from, who became part of the Avengers eventually. Earth 987 was an actual universe from the Marvel What If comics, because this is the What If series, so it makes sense that they would reference the What If comics. What If issue number 110, which was an Uncanny X-Men issue with Professor X, Colossus, and the Phoenix. Earth 783 is from a Deadpool comic book. I did think it was weird that they didn't try doing any Deadpool episodes because they knew that this was probably going to come out after Deadpool and Wolverine. 543 might be the Fantastic Four reference. That was actually a Civil War issue, and that's kind of what's going on in this episode. Even though mostly the villains that you see are White Vision and Mysterio, the idea is that his Iron Federation involved a lot more other characters too. Like they show some Hydra characters that were henchmen for him. 238 is actually meant to be an Avengers reference. It's a Vision storyline where he reactivates and is a total dick with new powers. I think that's meant to be a reference to White Vision going off the rails and being controlled by Mysterio in this episode. Rushville feels like a deep-cut reference to the Rush character from the Warp World comics, which are actually a relatively recent thing in Marvel Comics. Rush was from a Warp World Iron Hammer comic book issue. If you didn't read the Warp World comics, that was a crossover storyline where Gamora gained the Infinity Stones, locked everyone's souls inside the Soul World, then folded it in half, causing everyone's souls to combine, creating new characters that were just like the combination of two. Rush was the combination of Princess Powerhouse and Blur, and Iron Hammer was Sigurd Stark, for example, like making more Iron Man references, because this is a Riri Williams Ironheart episode. He was a combination of Iron Man and Thor, also called Stark Odin's son. Riri Williams meets with Sharon Carter, who's in full power broker mode, running some kind of black market here, selling her a microwave, but the way they explain it, it's like a kid's play toy microwave. She's using it to create a weapon that will allow her to counteract vibranium so she can fight White Vision. The reason why it's analog is because Vision, the Ultron bots, as well as Mysterio can control digital tech with their nanites. You notice Riri Williams is wearing a slightly different version of an Ironheart Mark I suit, which is meant to be like her version of the Iron Man Mark I. The version she wore during the Black Panther Wakanda Forever movie was a little bit different, but it's the same basic idea, like really dumpster dive parts kind of situation. The Ultron bots show up and they start to explain some of the twists Mysterio's using his new technology, the ways he's modified Stark Technologies' Iron Man tech to suit his needs. He's basically used it to upgrade his illusions, so it's more like a Star Trek holodeck situation where the safeties get turned off and the holograms themselves can do actual damage to you, making Mysterio way more powerful, and he's also straight up controlling White Vision, who is crazy OP, even without the Mind Stone. She's saved from White Vision by Valkyrie, Wong, Okoye, and Ying-nan, who's Michelle Yeoh's character from the Shang-Chi movie. Like I said, I think they were expecting Shang-Chi 2 to come out before this, so like, you remember that one character? Yeah, like Michelle, yeah, she's a great person, but she's not coming back to voices. It's not her doing the actual character herself. The Watcher does a flashback to explain the emergence. They explain in this universe it happened before the Eternals could unite to stop it. But if you think about the timeline here, the fact that White Vision exists means that the emergence still happened after the events of WandaVision. So like it didn't happen that much sooner in the timeline, just a little bit sooner. So the emergence happens, most of the characters die, like the majority of characters die, only a couple survive, including most of the heroes. He sees that as an opportunity to take control of all of Iron Man's technology, which includes White Vision, because remember, he was technically created with Stark Tech, so it makes sense that he'd be able to find a way to hack his programming. Then the reason why it seems like he's a crusty old man at the end of the episode, like they make it seem like a lot of time has gone by, but not that much time has gone by. The reason why he looks like he's on the edge of death here is because of the way he's modified his body, the way that Iron Man put the arc reactor inside himself and it started to pollute him during Iron Man 2. This is meant to mirror Riri Williams' storyline too, where they basically explain to her that by combining herself like on a biological level with Vision's technology, she's basically shortening her lifespan. Like this is eventually going to kill you. This is why you look at his head and it looks kind of like Iron Man did when he was being polluted by his arc reactor. But the way they explain in this episode, Ironheart is creating a weapon to disable vibranium, and White Vision is made up of mostly vibranium. You notice the boat they're on is the same one they used during Thor Love and Thunder. It's basically like a pleasure yacht they were using for tourism in New Asgard. That's why there's this giant bar in here, so like them drinking at the bar is meant to be a comp to Thor Love and Thunder when they were doing the exact same thing. They mentioned that their ship sank a long time ago, a reference to their base actually being the ruins of the Titanic ship floating in outer space now. They give her the rest of the tech she needs to build the weapon, and then you notice some of the Iron Federation troops that show up that are working for Mysterio are wearing Hydra armor. Makes sense, Hydra evil stuff survived in this universe, so he would be co-opting some of that too. Vision shows up and just wipes the rest of all the Resistance troops, RIP to all of them. Wong casts a Vishanti protection spell that's going to last 7 minutes. The Vishanti are a trio of really powerful magic gods that Doctor Strange gets his magic from in the comics. He forms a contract with them, channeling their power, but the way they explain them in the MCU is a little bit different. Inside the movies, they're mostly just used as background Easter eggs, like there is a book of the Vishanti that shows up in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, so they exist in the MCU, and they're still this trio of magical gods. They just haven't become as big of characters inside the movies yet. Wong gives them all magical armor. They try and fail to fight White Vision, like he basically sidesteps them after he can break through the Vishanti spell. When she says reverse the polarity before she takes him down, that's a Doctor Who joke. She uses White Vision to turn herself into like a Vision hybrid, like she literally becomes Vision in effect. But the big twist here is Mysterio revealing that he's also turned himself into a cyborg like Riri Williams just did, baking all of the nanite technology into himself so that he can control all of his illusions at the biological level. The only way to stop them is to literally kill him. Then the way their battle plays out is meant to be a reference to Spider-Man Far From Home when he had the same battle with Mysterio, like him just pulling him through all of his illusions to the point where he didn't know what was real and what was fake. The reason why he's still able to control her is because the way the nanites have been baked into his body, like he can control Iron Man technology, and she essentially is White Vision, which is Iron Man's technology. Then the way he slowly goes out in the episode, like his downfall, is similar to his downfall in the MCU, like he goes full syndrome, villain monologuing. So instead of killing her on the spot, Mysterio starts villain monologuing, giving her time to get the pep talk from the Watcher, which causes her to rally and defeat him. When Mysterio starts taking her vision tech and incorporating it into his body, and then she essentially reverses that and sucks all the nanites out of him and the vision tech, this feels like a reference to the WandaVision series where Scarlet Witch did the exact same thing to Agatha, sucking all the power out of her after she tried to take all of her chaos magic. She leaves him powerless, just like Agatha, but because the technology has polluted his body so much, like degraded his body so much, he just winds up dying from all the injuries. She puts up the large nanite version of the Avengers logo around the remnants of the Earth, and they destroy a statue Mysterio erected to himself, also setting up the tag scene at the end with the other Watchers from his race. They get pissed that the Watcher broke his oath again, like multiple times broke his oath. They're calling this first main Watcher the Eminence. I think he's meant to be a version of Iran from the comics, who was originally an evil member of the Watcher's race, but the way they use them in the episode, they make it seem like it's just the regular Watchers from his race wanting to sanction him for breaking his oath. Basically setting up a Watcher versus Watchers multiple battle in the finale this season. It makes sense because it brings the series full circle. Like, the Watcher broke his oath really big in the first season. He did it again during season 2. So like at a certain point, the Watchers would be like, okay, we're gonna slow your roll on this. No more interfering. The next Watcher is named the Incarnate, and the third one is called the Executioner. Very on the nose. I wonder why, ironically, he's called the Executioner. One of the big cameo scenes here, though, is that Jason Isaacs is playing the Eminence character, the one that's actually speaking here, the leader of the Watchers. He's actually been in Marvel movies before, though. He was in the Elektra movie, which they just brought her back for Deadpool and Wolverine. During that movie, he played one of the main villains. He also played Mephisto, of all people, during the Midnight Suns game. Everybody posts all your Mephisto memes. The slight connection back to the Ironheart character, because this is kind of an Ironheart episode, is that in the MCU, like the live-action movies and TV shows during the Ironheart series, they're supposed to use the Mephisto character and introduce him in the MCU. He's supposed to be connected to the Hood's storyline, who's like the main villain of the series, with him trying to get more magical power. The Hood is supposed to be the main villain of the series, not Mephisto. Like, Mephisto is just a cameo during the series. But there's a bunch of Easter eggs and references in the episode. If there's any that you spotted that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. Episode 6 will post tomorrow. It's supposed to be the 1872 episode, which is basically like Shanghai Noon in the MCU. It's like a Kung Fu Western episode with Shang-Chi teaming up with Kate Bishop, but all the Marvel characters are in the Old West. So it's a little bit like the Marvel 1602 episode last year, just in the Old West. There's a bunch of other big stuff happening this week. My Creature Commandos episode 5 video will post next. Make sure to enable alerts for my channel so you don't miss any of that stuff. I've already done a much bigger Ironheart trailer video. You can click here for that. Those episodes will come next year. And click here for all my What If episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.